Today I'm going to teach you how some of the most famous Doom songs got their start using the words of the man who made them, Bobby Prince. What better song to start with that spans all the way from classic Doom to Eternal, At Doom's Gate. The id Software development team originally wanted me to do nothing but metal songs for Doom. I did not think that this type of music would be appropriate throughout the game, but I roughed out several original songs and also created MIDI sequences of some cover material. This was before any level design and was before most of the artwork had been created. As the game came together, the guys at id saw that this type of music was not appropriate for many of the levels in Doom. Thinking that this would be the case, I had also roughed out a lot of ambient, moody background music, much of which ended up in the game. This song was one of the first of its type that I wrote. I heard it as being on a level that went by really fast. As it turns out, John Romero, who placed all the songs on the levels, decided it was a perfect song for the first level. The next song is a classic, not just because of the interesting instrument choice that he used, but because it was awesome in the 90s and shows up in Eternal. This is Into Sandy City. When I was composing the songs for Doom, I did not get to see any finished levels. In the case of Doom 2, there were some levels that changed very little from the very early days of development. One of these was what I called Sandy City because it was a level designed by Sandy Peterson. Everyone loved playing that level, and I decided that I had to write a song that sounded sorta city-like. This song was the result. Originally, I had a piano playing the part that the harpsichord is playing, but no one at id liked the idea of a piano in any of the music. As a joke, I changed the patch to the harpsichord. I expected everyone to voice opposition, but everyone seemed to like it, so I left it in. Sandy City level made it into Doom 2, but there were several changes made to raise the frame rate, I think, and to me, the changes made the level less fun to play. But it's still a great level, especially for deathmatch. This one is truly a classic with an interesting origin story, talking about the interesting behavior of the man himself, champion of Doom and id Software, John Romero. This is Waiting for Romero to Play. This song was easily named. You wouldn't believe how people in the id Software offices used to line up to watch John Romero play Doom. Long before the sound effects were in the game, John would provide his own, and he was good at making a lot of sound effects with his mouth. But the reason that people lined up to watch him play was that he put everything he had into playing the game. If it was a deathmatch, look out! John threw a constant barrage of taunts, screams, and other sounds at the opposing players. One day, I noticed how quiet things got while people were gathering to watch, and I decided to do some pensive music to go with such times. Thus, the song became Waiting for Romero to Play. John has now left id Software to form his own company. There are better players at id, but none of them will ever have people lining up in anticipation of watching them play as John did. I know that id Software will sorely miss the manic energy that John Romero provided. id Software's very own artist, Adrian is the man behind this song's inspiration, and let me tell you, it is a creepy vibe that is really kind of crazy. This is the Demons from Adrian's pen. This song was inspired by watching Adrian Carmack, the lead artist at id Software, while he was touching up the artwork on the spider boss in Doom. Adrian conceived the demons in Doom. He starts out doing a pencil sketch. The sketch is then either transferred into computer art by hand, or it is made into a model which is then digitized. The digitizing of the model sounds simple, but there is much that has to be done before digitized artwork can be used. A good bit level artist is worth his or her weight in gold when it comes to superior game artwork. Starting at about 1 minute and 12 seconds into the song, you'll hear a musical technique that helps to keep a song interesting without being obvious. What the composer does is change the feel of the downbeat. There are many ways to do this, but in this case, I started playing the bass drum and snare drum parts an eighth note later than it had been played up to that time. This makes the music feel like it is pushing ahead while seeming to rotate or turn around. It's almost the same thing as causing a car to start spinning out of control. At 1 minute 36 seconds, the car all of a sudden jerks back out of the spin. The legend himself, John Carmack, programming genius at id Software, is the one behind this track. Check out how Bobby influenced from John as John went deep into the code. If everyone at id Software worked as long and hard as John Carmack, id Software would be absolutely untouchable by any competition. Everyone else at id Software would answer this by saying that they have a life outside of developing games. John would answer that he does too, but he'd rather be programming all the time. Smiley face. The reason I bring this up is that while I was at id during the development of Doom, I stayed in the office many hours myself. After all, that's where all my transplanted music toys were located. As a result of long hours at the office, John and I were often there at the same wee hours of the night. John would only leave his office to nab a Coke or to run to the men's room. That is, except when he had something special programmed and wanted someone to see it. Those kinds of things happen a lot around John too. He's always coming up with some cool addition to his engines. Many times in those wee hours, I would come to a point where I couldn't make positive progress toward completing a song or a sound effect. I would go out into the then main room where a pool table sat and just roll the balls around the table. I could look into John's office and he would be sitting there in a world of his own, oblivious to anything else going on. When I worked on this song, I took a break at the pool table and saw John working away. That's when the name of this song hit me. id Software's earlier game, Wolfenstein 3D, was a huge impact on this song, and it's not in a very good way. You've got to check this out. This is Evil Incarnate. This song was originally written for Wolfenstein, which only supported FM synthesizers. In order to get into the mood for it, I rented a movie about the infamous Doctor of Auschwitz and watched it until I was totally infuriated. This song was the result of the feeling of evil that came over me thinking about the terrible things the Nazis did. During the development of Doom 2, a decision was made, by John Romero I think, to include at least one Wolfenstein level. This song had been one of John Carmack's favorites in Wolfenstein, so I translated the FM file to a general MIDI file. The FM version had an instrument that sounded like footsteps for soldiers marching, and I had to try to find a similar sound among the 128 standard instruments that make up the general MIDI standard. It turned out that the gunshot patch, which is general MIDI instruments include several sound effects, would work if I played a very low octave note for a relatively short time. One would call this using an instrument patch by abusing it. The problem with doing this is that not all sound cards have the same effect when you abuse individual instruments. Such is the case here. On some wavetable synths, these footsteps last long enough that you begin to hear the ricochet part of the gunshot. On the Roland sound canvas in the Yamaha MU-80, it does sound like many soldiers marching. Such incompatibilities and quirks are the price one pays for trying to make something do what it was not really intended to do. How did a developer at id Software and another genre of music influence this Doom track? There's also a sound that adds in a special unique feel, dissonance, that Bobby worked into the music. This is the Dave D. Taylor Blues. Between Doom and Doom 2, I worked with John Carmack and Dave Taylor at id to help port Wolfenstein to a video game platform. At that time, Dave was doing the sound code for the port, and I was designing the instrument samples and tweaking the MIDI files to keep the number of notes to a minimum. Somewhere along the line, Dave mentioned something about a blues song, and it stuck in my mind. When I wrote the music for Doom 2, that idea became a song which I named in honor of Dave. Dave has since left id Software to go with his own company, Crack.com. That is the company that developed Abuse, which is now distributed by Origin. This song follows the classical blues chord progression, which is 12 bars long. The chord progression is as follows, and I'll put this in the description below for you to see. Listen for the echo on the rhythm guitar. This is one of the first songs where I experimented with doing a MIDI echo. The idea is to play a note and hold it. Then you play the same note over and over again, reducing the volume of each succeeding note. The results are an echo that is almost as good as those played through digital reverberation or echo units. It sounds like some of the original analog tape echo units of the 60s. The lead for this song gets pretty weird starting in about 3 minutes 37 seconds, but I love the dissonance it causes. It is the dissonance I felt the first time I played Doom, a feeling of almost standing up straight while almost falling on one's butt at the same time. Which song was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and consider becoming a patron at the Patreon in the link in the description or on the screen here to support the channel and get some really cool perks. I'm Allstin. Thank you for watching.